It's far from the truth. Friedrich Nietzsche, he thought this was a huge detriment to our society and that it would bring nothing but hurt and pain. And he's right. And so the question that arises is, how do we resurrect God? How do we, bring God back to life? How do we, teach people that there is something beyond this and that the world of the Spirit lives within us as without us? And, this is the reason why Mark Passio teaches the Hermetic principles along with, in the Natural Law series, in his Natural Law conference, because to understand the physical effects of the natural law, which I believe are the Hermetic principles, then, this is the beginning of understanding of the natural law itself. It's just like the study of physiology or the study of physics. You're studying something physical to see processes that you can't see, or to understand processes, to begin to understand processes you can't see. So, anyway, how do we resurrect God? Well, in my research, I looked up this biblical verse, Ezekiel 18:20, and I think it highlights it very perfectly. The Son shall not bear the guilt of the Father, nor the Father bear the guilt of the Son. The righteousness of the righteous shall be upon himself, and the wickedness of the wicked shall be upon himself. A father and son are each responsible for his own wickedness or righteousness. So right there, it's telling you, be an individual. Your rights, your free will, everything comes to you as an individual. It does not come to you as a group of people. God did not create people as a group. When he created man, he created them individually. He made Adam, and then from Adam he made Eve, and so on and so forth. But he did not create them as a group. So that's another sign, of individualism. It's another metaphor of individualism. So this is how we resurrect God. We resurrect the individual. We put away, this whole idea of collectivism. Because even through individuality, can we collect as one? But that's for a little further into the podcast. So anyway, continuing. It's being responsible for oneself. Individualism. When we seek that responsibility, we become closer to God, because God is the ultimate Father. He holds ultimate responsibility for us. But he tells us, if you don't listen to our rules, my rules, this is going to happen. But he gives you a second chance. This is where mercy comes in, and he wants you to build your consciousness, build yourself up in the Church of Christ, so that you can be a better person. This is how we resurrect God. You have to seek out true morality. And that's the reason why I don't do seances. Even though I do magic, I don't do seances, at least not anymore. Now that my magical practice began whenever I was 8 years old. I began studying, and my father was a left-hand magician. Okay. So my experience of magic comes from a broad spectrum. And I finally rested upon Christian magic because it is the truth. It really is the truth. And it's the perfect display of the natural law, even though people don't see it, because it has been destroyed by literalists. It has been destroyed by, the Catholic Church. The Catholic Church had its place at the time. There's a lot of chaos, in the world at the time. But then there's selfish people who took advantage of it because they didn't believe in the truth of what was being spread through Christianity. But let's continue on. So anyway, that's the reason why I don't do seances, because, even though in the Bible it does say not to do magic at all, that is true. But there's, I believe that the Bible has been manipulated, to say this. And that, there are certain things in the Bible that have been construed in such a way that, it keeps people from magic. So really, it doesn't say not to use magic at all, but to use magic in a certain way, of course. And I explained that in my last podcast when I was talking about the Testament of Solomon. And, but anyway, I don't do seances because when someone dies, their spirit wants rest. I figure. They just went through all this trauma, through living. They went through all this, bad crap. They fulfilled their purpose, and they just want to rest. I wouldn't want to be bothered. Not until it's time for my soul to be on this earth again. If reincarnation is true or not, who knows? I don't know. So that's one, that's one thing leading to true morality for me has been. But, true morality, is really the recognition of the natural law. Again, let me say that. The recognition of true morality is the recognition of the natural law. The natural law teaches us you should not act upon a person. You should not hurt or even do anything to another person, without their permission, and two, without them breaking the natural law upon you. So say someone broke into your house. They're in your house. You had the choice to shoot them. That's just part of the natural law. You have the right to protect your property, your individual life. This is another reason why individualism is so important. Because if it's up to the group, the group might be able to take everything from you. But since you're an individual, you have the ability to protect that individuality. You have the ability to protect your individual self. You can't let a group mob, you don't have to be subjected to mob attacks unless breaking the natural law, of course. But if we lived in a collective, they could vote. They could vote, against the natural law. And, just willy-nilly take whatever they want from you. Take whatever rights they want from you. But also being spiritual and resurrecting God means resurrecting tradition, or at least following tradition, and maybe even just tweaking it just a little bit, to get people to understand more of the psychological and metaphorical meaning, especially for yourself if you're doing this on an individual level, which really we should. This is how we truly resurrect the Church of Christ, is doing this on an individual psychological level. And, this is my whole point of doing this podcast, is to get people to think about this stuff. To think, you should really be building your temple and, figuring out who you are as a good person, and letting that be an authentic, true, let that be authentically true for yourself, So, you have to keep tradition, or even build tradition, but that's the thing, you can't let tradition get so hazy. You can't let it get so far to where you forget the whole reason of what that tradition is for. There's no point in it. There has to be, either you take, a tradition and you put a new metaphor behind it. But either way, there has to be a metaphor behind it. There has to be a spiritual and moral truth behind it. Or unless the tradition just becomes taken for granted. It has no real meaning. And that's the reason why I'm rekindling the tradition of Christian magic. I see it as the Catholic Church tried so hard to destroy magic in all its forms, whether it was good or evil. And it didn't start out like that. Now, there have been cases where they had let go of magical groups who practice, magic from the right hand path. But then in those same cases, you see the same people taken back up for witchcraft and killed. So you can see that it didn't start out that all magic was supposed to be attacked in the Catholic Church. So that is my whole point on reclaiming Christian magic. The main part is that it teaches, again, it's all about the individualism. Christian magic is a lot about, it truly focuses on the individual Christian, the individual spirituality. The person takes, a spiritual truth, they analyze it psychologically, and they put it through a physical form of ritual or spellcraft, right? And then they take that spellcraft they created and they enact it into their physical life. It becomes a way of psychologically programming them. But remember, like Jung said, when Westerners hear psychological, they just think psychological. You need to stop thinking, when I say psychological, you need to stop thinking just psychological. When I say psychological, I mean spiritual, too. Because this is where this, again, the church resides. This is your temple, the mind. And you don't want to keep it dirty. You want to clean it. So anyway, magic, is the physical fulfillment of, the whole part of the mind, body, and spirit. It's a connection of all three of these. And it helps us Christian magic helps us tap into the Christ consciousness. When you're invoking Jesus, when you're invoking Christ into your magic, you're literally asking for, to open yourself up to the Christ consciousness. You're asking for Christ to enter within you, the Spirit of Christ, the Holy Spirit. This is all three: physical, spiritual, and mental. Physical, spiritual, and mental. And it also teaches us discipline through ritual, because, not all Christian magic is just practical spells, practical divination and things like that. No, there's ritual behind it sometimes, full-blown ritual. And, you have to get these ritual parts right. Say the proper things, walk in the proper place, do the proper hand signs, arm signs, everything. This is a form of discipline. Because you have to discipline yourself to learn these things, believe it, and feel it. And remember, discipline is a huge part of the resurrection, of becoming an individual, taking up that discipline and taking up that responsibility. Again, it gives you a deeper attention to morality. Because, magic is a tool of the mind, body, and spirit, like I said. It has to have both. It has to, of course, create a physical effect with your will, teaching you a story, which leads you to moral truth. It's just pure positive energy. But then, also, another thing about Christian magic that most people would, probably not even think about, but is the whole point of cursing, okay? Jesus cursed the fig tree, okay?